Hello and welcome to Beyond Biotech, the weekly podcast from Labiotech. I'm Dylan Kassane and this is episode 150 for the podcast. When biotechs start fundraising, they regularly turn to the venture capital market seeking investment. The pool of VC money can be large, and part of that pool is corporate venture capital. Backed by firms keen to identify the next big thing in biotechnology, corporate VC money can be an attractive way for biotechs to raise funds privately while benefiting from the support and expertise of corporate supporters. This week, I talked with Paolo di Giorgio and Regina Hodits of Angelini Ventures, the corporate VC arm of Angelini Industries, itself the parent company of Angelini Pharma. Paolo and Regina lay out their perspective on the current fundraising landscape, identify the trends and opportunities for innovative biotechs in Europe, and walk me through the biggest threats to the biotech investment market they see on the near horizon. I hope you enjoy this discussion with Paolo and Regina of Angelini Ventures. Paolo and Regina, welcome to Beyond Biotech. And Paolo, I want to start with you. Could you just briefly introduce yourself and let us know how did you come to be working here at Angelini Ventures? And what drew you to venture capital investing in biotech in the first place?
Hi, Dylan. Well, good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So I'm the CEO of Angelini Ventures. And my background, I started as a scientist, did my PhD in United States, and then moved to the pharma industry. I worked for big pharma and then also for Angelini Pharma. And I've always been driven by innovation all my career. And I try to approach innovation in from different angles, first as a scientist and then in the pharma business. And once you are in that field, you realize that most of innovation today is coming from startup biotech, small size company that later on are acquired from pharma, and they contribute to what are the drugs approved by FDA. So for me, it was a natural transition to venture capital in that sense, in the sense of motivation of interest. In addition to the aspect purely related to innovation science, I was always attracted by the aspect related to managing a company and more the 360 degrees related to what you need to create a successful project, a successful outcome. And this, of course, is not only something related to science, but as we know, the team is extremely important, the capacity to find the capital, the financial aspect, be sure that all the shareholders are aligned and will get the right return. So that type of complexity really attracted me during my career, in addition to the pure passion, let's say, for science innovation. I would say venture capital is the perfect place to combine my interest. Frankly, I'm happy. I think I'm doing the best job in the world. And I'm in the best field in the world. Of course, there are challenges, but be able to be exposed every day to innovation globally, discuss with the top minds, something priceless. And it's very something that drives me every day.
Regina, what about you? Did you also have this path through top pharma to find your way into the VC world?
Hi, Dylan. Great to be here. Actually, no, I came more from the research and the consulting side, but actually I think the final result is exactly as Paolo was saying. The real pleasure that we have here at Angelini Ventures is that we can really invest and promote innovation that matters, that is really affecting the lives of people and making our healthcare better and making the lives of people and hopefully people around us that we care about, but also on a more global scale better. And I think this is really what drives most of us in the industry. Of course, it's about making money. We have been really fortunate that we have been awarded a significant portion of money that we can put to work here with really a broad mandate to actually invest in those opportunities, as I said, that can really drive the healthcare of the future. And I came from a research background, trained in Vienna and Cambridge, UK, at the beginning of the biotech world in the basic early to mid 90s, when protein engineering was coming of age, and the first antibodies that actually now are driving most of the sales within pharma were just kind of coming out of the lab. And having seen this transformation of having been in the lab that made the technology that made products like Humira possible, to really seeing this becoming one of the world's largest products, is just showing kind of really the opportunities that we can create in this industry.
Paolo, Regina mentioned a mandate there. Maybe we can take it even broader. What's the mission of Angelini Ventures? What have they tasked you to do?
Yes, so Angelini Ventures was founded in 2022, so we're quite a young group, young VC. And so the reason why we create a corporate VC in the Angelini Industries group is to have an access, I would say smart access to innovation in the life science world. So we have dual goals, one that is strategic and one is financial. So the financial goal is quite similar to every independent VC. So we're investing only in companies where we think we can generate financial return. And with this capital, we want to be sure that we can have a sustainable venture capital group, and in the future, the aspiration, the ambition to recycle this capital to have a sustainable evergreen venture capital fund. From a strategic point of view, we spend a lot of time at the beginning in the genesis of Angelini Ventures to be sure that we will not have made the same mistake that other corporate VC have done. And I will say, if you look, the average corporate VC normally lasts 1.5 years. The reason, most of the time, the reason why they last they have such a short lifespan is because they are created with a very strong strategic and captive mandate. And sometimes, the VC, they are under the R&D or under the strategy. And what they do, they fail in understanding what is the really market of the VC, what are the dynamics of other investors, what other investors look for in when they partner with the corporate VC. So we spend a lot of time in understanding that and be sure that when we launch our fund, this will be done in the right way. So from the point of view of structure, team, also incentives were very similar to an independent VC. From a strategic point of view, we interact, of course, with our corporate, with Angelini Industries. But our goals are, one is to, through our investment, to give the opportunity to Angelini Industries to have access to innovation, to really see where the innovation is coming from, to interact lightly with our portfolio company without any specific rights. And then, if there is a match in the future, they can, as other pharma, make an offer for a licensing or for an acquisition. But there are no captivity and there is not a special right that we normally ask in our portfolio company. So we operate very similar to an independent VC. But the advantage is that by operating in this market, we can create a network knowledge and understanding also where the biotech market is going or where the healthcare market is going, that in the long term is going to be very useful for a corporate group that has an operating pharma like Angelini Industries. And so in that sense, the dual strategy is, in one sense, to identify product that could be interest for pharma in the medium long term, but also we're investing in digital health and medtech. And this is an area where Angelini now is not active. And in this case, we are investing in a company that can really change and be disruptive in the healthcare business. And then in the future, have also be a potential opportunity to expand the business for Angelini Industries in new sectors. So just to wrap up, very strong financial mandate and return, very strong strategic identity, but creating a way that is light, is not something captive for as a corporate VC.
Regina, if that's the big picture, Can you tell me a little bit about the focus then? Paolo mentioned some medtech, some digital health, of course, a biotech in there as well. What are you actually focusing on, and how early are these investments being made?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And actually, following up from Paolo, before we go into some depth, I've only recently joined Angelini Ventures from an independent venture fund that I've built in the German-speaking area for the better part of the 15 years. And what has been the attraction, apart from the team, is really to have this unencumbered mandate. We see so many funds, especially here in Europe, but also globally, that getting very focused mandates on a geography, on certain stages, where actually really these mandates are limiting you to what you can do and also limiting you on how you can support the companies. And here having an evergreen structure where you're not bound to a certain length of holding time, which is getting in the way, or certain geographies where you need to focus a large majority of your cash or certain stages, is giving us a lot of freedom. But you're absolutely right. A VC fund without a strategy is basically going all over the place, and it's difficult. So basically, I think the overarching principle, as Paolo has also mentioned, is that it's really something that needs to be impactful for the healthcare system. And that's really kind of considering a patient journey, really from diagnosis to treatment to also follow up and supporting those patients. And some of those aspects can be better done with a device. Some can be better done with a digital solution. But if you home in a little bit, when you say stage-wise, on both of those businesses, staying with the health tech side of the business, we see this also a bit of a risk management side there. We have a very experienced colleague with Tanya Dow and also Elias Stupka, who's helping on that side, that have been in this industry, and especially Tanya has also been investing successfully on the digital health side. And there's few people that have done that. And one of the reasons is that she has been focusing on established business models. So if you look at our portfolio, a number of our investments on the digital health side, or health tech side in general, I should say, are either already generating revenues, or at least we can see a clear business model that has been already established, that has already been proven. So a little bit later stage, although we complement that also on the medtech side in our, we call them actually smart devices in a way, and connected devices. We can actually go earlier, but only if this business model question is solved. Compared it to the biotech side, where when Angelini Ventures was started, given that the strong heritage that the team had on the CNS side, they did some bold moves in very early investments that are could be completely transformational on the CNS side. And we still have several of those in our portfolio. They will take some time, but they're giving us, as Paolo said, this eye on the innovation in that space. Over the last 1.5 years, 2 years that Angelini Venture has been operating separately, we've come up with a strategy that says we would like to really focus on a few areas where we can really build expertise. And there we also want to be in a position that we can go a bit later in our investment hypothesis, because if you know the markets and if you know where those opportunities lie, where you can get the highest value creation, which is usually translating from preclinical to early clinical and clinical proof of concept, this is where, honestly, where most VCs have made their money. So we will be focusing on that area. We can from time to time go earlier, and I think Paolo will come to also our seed activities, I guess, a little bit later in this call. But mainly we are focusing on preclinical to early clinical side. The areas we like are currently we are focusing on our oncology, with a focus actually on targeted therapies. Anything that's actually getting a payload, that's getting an engager of sorts to the site of action, is something that we're quite excited about. We're looking also quite actively in the cardiac metabolic renal space, have announced an investment in a company called NuevaCore this week. It's also our first venture out to Asia. We think the market actually needs to be looked at globally, even given the news from yesterday on the US markets. Very exciting play in a gene therapy play in cardiomyopathies, but actually not focusing on single mutations, but larger target groups, again, with this idea of creating impact. And we're also starting to look at a couple of investments in the I&I space.
And this is fantastic information to know where Angelini sits and what the strategy is. But of course, it exists in a bigger venture capital context. Now, where do we see that context sitting right now? Paolo, if I can ask you, a couple of years ago, 2022, 2023, a big funding downturn. Are we still seeing the challenges that emerged a few years ago existing, or are we pulling out of that now and it's clear sailing ahead?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we still live and we still are experience a period in the market that is not back to 21 or to the peaks that we saw in the past. I mean, there are it's still a time where it's difficult to do fundraising for fund. It's also difficult for company to find capital and to close some rounds. So what we see now is that we saw much more internal rounds. In some case, we saw bigger round than before because investors, they want to be sure that the company will have the right capital to reach critical milestone, and also it takes more time for startups to close a round. So these are, I think, all aspects that we are experiencing in the market. Of course, from another point of view, this is also an opportunity because for group that now they have the capital to invest, I would say compared to few years ago, we can experience more reasonable valuation, better opportunity to create value in the futures. And of course, some rounds they're still quite competitive, but I think there is a good opportunity now to have access to good quality companies, and there is also some resetting. And these aspects are, I will say, definitely they are present in biotech, but in digitals they are even more extreme. In that case, really we saw a big resetting in terms of valuation, and also some investors that left the market there because there is some more time required to an exit. So we consider that still to be a very interesting sector, and I think not necessarily is a bad thing, because probably the result of this in few years will be that there will be fewer companies, but much better quality, and also with a better sense on how to spend capital and to focus on specific programs. So more efficiency in that sense. Also, huge difference between US and Europe as it was before. But I would say also the US market is realizing this, and they are trying to be much more conscious about capital spending at the level of startup and also in the fundraising.
Regina, if I can come to you, if I'm a biotech and I'm looking for funding, on one side I've got traditional VC, on the other side I've got corporate VC. What's the argument for going with corporate VC like Angelini Ventures instead of a traditional VC firm?
So I think if you're a biotech CEO and you're looking for money, actually it's a good time to talk to all of the sources of capital that are available, given where you are right now, just to kind of also get that out of the way. Times are not easy, although I want just to say on the bigger picture, if I may for a second, honestly, in Europe, we are not in such a bad situation as basically it may seem on the outlook, because there has been a lot of money raised for Europe in the good years. And we had never a stretch of biotech successes and markets actually going only in one direction, which was up, as we had from 2014 to 2021. This has been really in my 25 years history, the time that basically people have been able to raise money to really replenish the coffins. And we've also seen the advances of mega funds in Europe, be that EQT, be that the Forbian enterprise that they have built, or Giorgio and some of the others, Novo investing quite a bit also now in Europe. So there is actually larger pots of money, but actually what's missing is a little bit the glue, which we see that we at Angelini Ventures can be, which is the glue between some of the localized funds that actually also have local investment mandates, and actually then being the Series A, B investor that can really help them then to get to this level where the mega funds can be excited in them, and also we can kind of bridge the gap until hopefully also the global markets are going to be back again. Corporate funds in general, and I think Paolo has already said, we are managing money for Angelini Industries and not directly for Angelini Pharma, with really the intent to have a much broader look on the innovation landscape beyond the traditional remit of Angelini Pharma, which Paolo has covered before. So by investing with actually, by having Angelini Venture invest in your company, what you get is actually the best of both worlds. You get a fund that is really interested in your company proceeding and not as such being a feeder for a pharma pipeline, for its own pharma pipeline per se, but hopefully for a broader set of pharma pipelines. But you have the heritage of people that actually know how to develop drugs, that know how pharma works, and that know the diligence that is needed to develop those products. And we've been all working together with a number of corporate funds that are more closely linked to corporate R&D. In my view, they are always an advantage to have them on the cap table, as long as you know that when it comes to an exit or when they have a strategic interest, that they will be strategics. So as long as you manage that well, the input that you're getting is really valuable, and money these days is trumping everything else.
This expertise, the networks, the connection to Angelini Industries, but also to Angelini Pharma, I mean, this is fantastic for a biotech who's looking to make those sort of connections, especially early on. Can you think of a deal you did recently? I mean, you just closed one in the last couple of days, of course. Can you think of a deal that you did recently where this expertise, this connection, this network, this skill was something that really helped you to close the deal?
Well, maybe just to cite one deal that we closed recently is Numirna, is a company based in Copenhagen. Is a company that is developing a new therapeutic for epilepsy. And Angelini Pharma is a pharma operating in the epilepsy space. They have a product on the market. So for that particular company, we asked the R&D of pharma to take a look at the science and the potential of drug discovery for this product. And the R&D of pharma is quite experienced in the field of epilepsy, particularly the CSO and his team. So this was done. We're always careful, of course, we have a Chinese wall between us and pharma, so they did their own CDA and their own separate assessment. But the CSO was extremely excited about the science beyond the program and the potential, and they analyzed the company quite thoughtfully. I mean, they come out with their very positive assessment. And so this for us was a way to leverage some of the expertise of the pharma R&D, and also, I mean, of course, they were able to give some advice and suggestion to the company. And so we see in that case, it was a dual value. One, for us to have an additional validation of the value and the science behind the company. On the other hand, also to help the company to consider some aspects related to the drug discovery that could have been useful in the future. So I think this could be a good case. Another more generic case is that we have a very strong IP expert in Angelini Industries that sometimes help us with the valuation. And more than once, the company, they ask him to help him create the IP pipeline or IP strategy for their portfolio. So this is another example where somebody from Angelini Industry really can help creating value in the portfolio company, in addition to the money, but also bringing some expertise that for startups are always useful, because they have a limited resource, a limited number of people, so additional knowledge in some specific space, they're always precious.
And maybe, Dylan, if I may add to that, the value that I see from having recently joined the team, it's the connection that there can be with pharma, and Paolo described Numirna as an example, but also Numirna is a good example to see what the team at the Angelini Ventures can do. It's very rare, in my view, from what I've seen, and I've been in this industry for quite a time, on both sides of the Atlantic, that they have in a VC that's not directly bound to a pharma, so not a strategic VC as such, so that you find that development expertise. So we actually have a CMO on the team. We have several people that actually have been involved in running clinical trials. We have a close network of advisors, not that kind of our arm's length, but that are part of our due diligence process, that have spent their life in pharma, in pharmacology, toxicology, preclinical development that really help us to kind of make an assessment on something. I mean, if you think about Numina, it's an easy one where a lot of investors would say, whoa, this is an intrathecal injection of an ASO, of a nucleotide-based drug in a certain subpopulation of epilepsy. So that actually basically means there are so many red flags in there already for a standard VC to say like, wow, I'm not really sure how to get my head around it. It's the Angelini venture team that actually has the expertise to due diligence that and pick out a way why this actually works for a certain patient population. And that's really something, well, each time we're due diligencing a deal here, we're currently looking at several oncology opportunities. I'm super impressed by the speed and the depths of the questions we get, and also the feedback from the entrepreneurs that we get. They really love the interaction with the team because there's a counterpart on the other side that doesn't only understand the financial implications and BD implications, which all of the other VCs bring and which is very valuable. And so this goes well beyond a connection to pharma. This is really ingrained also within Angelini Ventures.
Let me ask a little bit about some of the companies that you see that maybe you don't move forward with. We don't want to talk about them specifically by name, but being a VC means you see a lot of innovation, you see a lot of things very, very early. Do you really get a picture out there of what are the therapeutic areas or the modalities that are sparking a lot of interest or where there's going to be some real big steps forward? What should we look for? What are the therapeutic areas? What are the modalities that you're seeing more and more of that looks really interesting now?
So basically, the way how we're trying to stay on the forefront what's happening is two things. One thing what we're doing, for example, I mentioned that oncology is one of the areas where we have a couple of very active due diligences ongoing, and we very basically picked out a targeted approach where we say whatever we can deliver to the site of action to either kill or the tumor, activate the immune system are things that are of interest to us. And how do we actually pick? Why did we pick that? And actually, how do we pick within that actually really biological themes that matter? Is first of all is that we actually have colleagues that I told you understand the development path, and these colleagues we really also send out to content-driven conferences. So not the BD conferences, but really talk about the recent conferences like AACR or ASCO or ESMO coming in autumn, and really go there not only with a mandate to kind of just look for some posters, but actually to talk to the people that are the bleeding edge innovation sessions there, make sure we have the connections to them, and then match that with what we actually hear from the clinicians when we actually do due diligence. So we have several active due diligences ongoing where we have the chance to talk to people that are really seeing patients and actually can come back with the medical need from there, and then square that with the kind of connections that we have to the pharma industry to kind of try to feel a little bit what could be on the cards for them in the future and what could still be too far out. And with that, we're trying to then kind of narrow down the remit. And this is how we ended up in certain fields within the oncology space. Meaning, most likely, any kind of cell therapy approach is out for us. Any non-targeted kind of DNA damage repair, RNA editing is something you probably have to have a hard time to get us out of bed right now. So, and not because we don't see interesting kind of opportunities there. It's just that you need to kind of have a bit of content know-how. You need to have a network to due diligence those opportunities. And this may change. I mean, for the right opportunity, we may actually say we change that. So, for example, we didn't look for a gene therapy approach to treat cardiomyopathies necessarily, but we actually wanted to do something that actually does really matter in heart failure. And we found an opportunity where actually then we adapted our strategy because the opportunity we saw actually really worked for us. And this is what we did with Novacore. So maybe I'll leave it at that. I have some more thoughts on differentiation on deals, but Paolo, I don't know if there's something you want to add.
No, absolutely. I think that's covered quite well.
Paolo, if maybe I can come to you, what about in terms of geography for investing? Of course, we've always had North America, Europe. We talk about APAC in general, but is there somewhere that's untapped right now that you might be looking at?
Yes, I mean, historically, we have been investing in both the US and European market. Actually, if you see at our portfolio, the majority of our investments so far have been done in North America, between US and Canada. And just today, we announced our first investment in Asia, in Singapore. So, in the market, they are quite different in the sense that the US market, of course, is more mature. There are more capitals. There are also more talents that have the right expertise to bring company to the final stage. Europe is not far behind with that, particularly in some geography. Maybe South Europe, like Italy, for example, is a country where there is definitely needs for more talents. There is good science, good VCs, but is more having the right people with drug discovery experience that can, or like with experience of bringing a startup to the right stage that can help transform science in drug discovery in successful company. So, if you look from that point of view, I think there are some geographies in Europe where there is opportunities because there are good science, a good possibility to create companies and platforms that will be quite successful in the long term. And also the valuation from a financial point of view, they are much more investor friendly than the United States. So that's an area where there is a good opportunity to build company and to help shaping the team and the direction for a company in the right way. Asia is another market that we think is very interesting. And for example, Singapore, there have been in the last decades a lot of effort to really translate science in a company that could be of success international, not only in the specific geography. In addition to that, we're seeing a lot of new biotech emerging in the Chinese market. So that's an area that we're just starting to look at. We did our first investment, but we are definitely planning to expand. So just to make it short, I think every geography has its own pros and cons, and advantage and challenges. And I think being a global VC like we are is a huge advantage, because sometimes you really see the complementarity between geographies, and even the possibility. Now we are all used to work remotely. As a team, we work remotely. As some of our VC, our portfolio companies, they have a team that is a hybrid between Europe and US. I think if you are able to build that in the right way, you can really get the best of both. And you can really find a way to initiate, maybe just to give you an example, a company in Europe with great science, with good founders, and then try to get management in from US, and then be able to raise an additional round with better valuation on the US market, and they have already a door for the US market, just to give you an example. And I think this is it's very important. It could be a huge advantage if played well by a global VC.
This all sounds very positive. What about the negative side, though? What are the threats to biotech right now? What are the threats for VCs, but just more generally the industry there? Regina, can I start with you?
Absolutely. Basically, I think the threats also need you to, of course, things you can do about them. And so, as Paolo was saying, one of the threats, of course, we're all looking to the US for maybe a correction of pricing. That was something that people have seen on the cards anyway for a while, but maybe didn't want to quite face that is coming our way. And I see this also as an opportunity for Europe. It's definitely an opportunity for Asia, as Paolo said, and we see a lot of activities in Asia, but it's also it's a chance for Europe to focus on its core, and science has been strong here. We've got really good translational setups over here by now. And also maybe just to mention that, because it's something we're quite proud of, as Angelini Ventures, we are involved in several translational activities. Paolo is sitting on the board of a venture studio in France called Argo Bio. And Angelini Ventures was instrumental in setting up Extend, which is an incubator in Italy. And I have the pleasure to, for example, be on the board of the BII, in addition to my activities here at Angelini Ventures, but also hopefully leading to some collaboration in the future, which is a big translational institute in Denmark. So we have this infrastructure in Europe and we need to use it wisely, because the threat is, of course, that anything that can be copied easily will be copied by China or by anybody else. So we haven't even talked about India. We have also not talked about general companies that are being set up as copycats. So what's going to be super important is that you focus on understanding biology in a deeper way that is actually meaningful for clinical development, and work on those translational aspects. So we're currently, for example, looking at an ADC company which has a better ADC than someone else. So if you actually want to bring this to the market, first of all, you need to be fast. And secondly, you need to just have an absolutely clear clinical strategy, and your preclinical data needs to be supporting the patient population that you go in, and also kind of the readouts that you want to have along the way. Otherwise, you cannot play in such a competitive space. Question is whether you need to. You can also go somewhere completely differently. We mentioned Numian and Novacor. These are opportunities that are not easily to be copied. Again, because it's a deep understanding about the biology, it's a modality that's not that easy, and it is a development plan that's specifically tailored to a patient population. So I think the threat of kind of copycats, a lot of money in Asia, the threats of the US markets actually going to be very selective on whether they actually pay very highly priced treatments, and or they will actually force price pressure on kind of the medium segment of opportunities, is just leading you to having to be very smart, very selective. And I think this is where in Europe we have a real opportunity. And I think also at Angelini Ventures, we are well positioned to really capitalize on this.
Yeah, Paolo, I mean, IP protections, trades, tariffs, elections, geopolitics, pricing pressures, regulations. What's keeping you up at night?
Well, I mean, there are definitely all critical aspects that we need to look at and consider. You can do that during your due diligence, but some of the future development, of course, they're unpredictable and they are going to transform with time. So I would say, also Regina mentioned some of them, like the risk of copycat of IP. So, I think I think it's important to be conscious and be aware. But at the end, you cannot predict the future, and you need to you need always to be able to take decision with your risk assessment that you can do at that time with the information that you have. Sometimes the information they're the best you can get, but you cannot predict how the U.S. market will change in 5 years from now when your drug will be on the market, or how the pharma landscape will change. If there will be some policy that will shorten the IP length. So these are all of these are threats that we monitor, we see, we understand. But and sometimes it can also influence some of the decision that you can take on some specific asset class. But I would say as type of analysis, this is something we take in consideration. Sometimes there are cases where this can higher the bar. For example, another aspect could be the price pressure on some specific category. There was a lot of hype decades ago on even ultra-rare disease. Now this is something that we look with more conservatively, because we know that getting a huge price on a drug could be more challenged. So that means that you need to be able to reach a higher pool of population in order to generate the right returns on that. So all of these are things that definitely can shape the market, can shape the profile of the company that you are looking at. And also sometimes the way you design the pipeline of a company can change based on that. So I would say there's not a specific thing that keep me up at night. It's more be able really to understand how the scenario could change in the future, and assess the threats early on and try to predict your best, but without being scared or be paralyzed by fear and say, okay, no, this is not going to do. I think the key is always be sure that when you invest, you have something that has a huge potential in terms of impact on patients, and of course there is let's say, sizable commercial case. But once you have this argument and this base, then you can go on and proceed with the rest of your assessment, your analysis.
Regina, I'm just going to finish with you. How can our audience here at Beyond Biotech stay updated on what you're doing at Angelini Ventures, the investments you're making? Where's the best place for them to get more information?
At Angelini Ventures, we actually do have a very, very good communication strategy in person. You have experienced that, Dylan, yourself, by actually Martina reaching out to you, and also the support that we're getting from the guys at Strava. So actually, you will find us mainly on LinkedIn. I think is the best way to really keep up to date, where actually we publish all of our news, where you'll also find some background analysis what we're doing. But we actually are actively going to a number of the conferences out there. We want to meet people. We haven't touched that. We actually operate the team on a remote basis. Each of us is sitting in an innovation hub. So actually going to conferences is also a way for us coming together. So we'll actually, most of us at least on the biotech side, will team up in Bruges next week. The week thereafter, we're actually doing a whole team event out in Copenhagen where we come together. So you'll find us around the main conferences, in the innovation hubs, and as I said, on LinkedIn, and we are open for business anytime. So if you have a question, or anybody out there in the audience, do contact us. Very happy to be in touch.
Regina, Paolo, thanks for joining us today on Beyond Biotech.
Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you, Dylan.
That's it for this episode. Don't forget to check out all the latest news and analysis at Labiotech.eu. I hope wherever you are in the world, you have a great week ahead. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next time for another Beyond Biotech.